You're the first ever Mondo Con. Not only that, you're at the first ever Mondo Con panel. So thank you very much for coming out for this. So that's really awesome of you. All right, so you are at the Art of Toymaking panel, and you're going to learn how some badass people make some really, really badass collectibles. And so, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce your moderator, Justin Ishmael.
Hey, what's up? Do my Neil Hamburger impression with this drink. Spill all over. Thank you for coming to Mondo Con. It's really super weird that this is happening. I was coming in this morning, like looking at all you guys in line, and people traveling. Like we were talking to Mike Mitchell, and he said someone just came from Japan. It's like really nuts that you guys trust us enough to do this. So thank you. Give yourselves a round of applause for being the first one. And trusting us. So this panel is, I have some friends that we're working with on toys, and I really do mean that. Like I consider these guys really like good friends. And it's fun to do that. Like when we started posters, Rob kind of reached out to the artist community that was doing gig posters, and they were his friends. And that was kind of a thing we would do where we work with people and they kind of become friendly or friends. And it's really fun to have that kind of continuous relationship, even though you're working on products or you're working on just whatever. Like Mondo Con is that place for everyone to come and hang out. So this specific panel for the next hour or so will be dedicated to us venturing out into toys and working with these new pals. So let's bring up Brock Otterbacher first. Then we have, from across the pond, Dan Willett. Come on up. You all know and love him. Mike Mitchell, bring him up. Wow, this is the first one. Let me go. Let's see if this works. There we go. So I just personally, I guess this is personally, like I'm a toy fan, and we had like when I say we, like Mitch, Rob, and I had always like wanted to do toy stuff. Like even when we were doing like 2010, 2009 when I came on, we were wanting to do it, and we always had these ideas of doing busts of like Kubrick or directors. We wanted to do like really classy busts that you put on like a mantle or something, just because we like directors so much. And we just couldn't find anyone to do it. And that's a huge part of this, is like the production, the packaging, the quantities that we want to do. Like posters, you can do small stuff, but toys it's harder if you want to do like a mass-produced thing to get any kind of like real thing made. So we just kind of put it on hold with always the kind of intent on doing it in the future. And in about, I think it was like 2010 or something, it's really soon after I came on, I talked to this company called Velocitron. It's on the right, and that's kind of technically the first toy that we ever did. It was Larvagon, that's the name of the toy, and I'm a big Deadly Spawn fan, so we just did a color change to kind of match the Deadly Spawn. So that was kind of like the Deadly Spawn version of the Larvagon as our first toy. And then we did, to the left, with Retro Band, who were here, we did the George Romero figure for the Dawn of the Dead screening. But those were kind of collaborations, and we wanted to do something kind of more robust. And we started talking about licenses, like what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And one of the things that kind of came up was Iron Giant, and we had done posters on it. We'd done a mystery movie with Kevin Tong in LA, and Brad Bird had become kind of a, I would dare to say, a fan. He would email us like wanting posters, and was just generally enthused about what we were doing. So when we went to Warner Brothers, they said, yes, Iron Giant is completely available. No one's asked about doing anything forever. Why would you kind of want to do it? And we explained our intentions, and that's like I had met Brock a really long time ago through. I don't know if you guys remember, like we used to sell posters on Sideshow, and that was we kind of met Brock through that, and we decided to do Iron Giant, and like that. There's a lot of things that go into designing a toy. Like you have to have really good reference, and so what that meant for us was we got the file from the actual Iron Giant movie from Brad Bird and Warner Brothers. So we were able to actually produce a figure. These are early files. These are early things that we. So basically, this presentation is going to be like images that Brock or Dan, and basically like what me and Mike would see, because we're the ones that are on the outside of the toy world, and these guys work inside of it. So it's kind of scary for, to get a picture in and be like, oh, what is going on with this? And these guys are kind of like, oh no, don't worry, it's going to be fixed, or it's okay. So this was kind of like the first thing that we would see for the Iron Giant. Like this was like mind blowing. This is unreal to me, because it's like we have a turnaround. And you always see like in film books or something, you always see turnarounds for like the final product. So this was kind of like the first thing. There's a lot of nerves and like, what are we going to do? Because it has to light up, it has to be articulated. And you want to go into kind of like the process? We have like the kind of clem photos.
Yeah, the interesting thing about this was that getting the file. The part of the story I like is like where the file for Iron Giant was stored at. And, because Warner Brothers, they had access to it, but we found out that Brad Bird actually had it stored at Pixar. So Pixar had stored the files for it, so we had to go. We didn't get to go there physically, but we had to get that from them. But then, we worked with a company called Big Shot Toy Works. So they were able to kind of take the file, which is John and Maya, it's a program they use, and they just kind of like crunch it down and put it into this is what. Or not, I'm sorry, this is ZBrush, right? That's CAD, okay. So basically, you take the file, which is just basically an exterior of the character, and then the real work is that, which is all the engineering and the internal works and all that kind of stuff. So it's a very, very long process. I think we started over a year ago, and the toy which you see out there when we first showed it at Comic-Con was literally like it had just gotten painted, so it took about a year to do, just to get to that stage. So it's a complicated process.
Yeah, and so another part of it was kind of like looking at the movie and figuring out what accessories we're going with it, because it's going to be like a deluxe package. And like I would go through, and Brock like hated this. I would come back and I would have like 1,000 things. Or like, oh, these come with a deer that he can hold. He's on a car. He like stepped on a twig. And he's a twig. Like I wanted it to be like so accurate, but it would have been so like you guys would have been like paying for like a $1,200 dumbest shit I wanted to. But so this is kind of where we netted out on it in a way. Like, and this is proportionate, right? That's like how like when we got the Hogarth. I got a picture from Brock, and it was like a coin for scale next to it, and I thought it was a quarter, and it was actually a dime. It was like the smallest little piece of figure, like easily swallowable. So if you have kids, like beware, don't play with this toy. But this is kind of the idea where, all the cars and all, like, and it's kind of like looking at the Trend Master stuff in the '90s, where they had these accessories and what they weren't able to do at the price point they were trying to sell, like in Kmart's or something, where we're going to be selling it direct. We can do more stuff since it's like deluxe model. So the one thing I'm really excited about is the seafood sign, where we're gonna have a magnet where you can actually pull off, like in the movie where he gets the S, and a lot of people are like, where did he get the S from? He finds it in the junkyard on a seafood sign, and he actually like plucks the S off and puts it on his chest. So you'll actually be able to do that for him by plucking the S off and putting it on his chest. It'll be magnetized and stuff. These are actual pictures from Brock that he would send from China or somewhere, somewhere with carpet. And these were kind of examples of the articulation and how wild this dude can get. And this is like through the process, like Brock was saying, several years. This was kind of what came out of it, and we're still working on it, obviously. Oops, sorry. Yeah, this is. Everyone's kind of asking when this is going to come out. I think we're looking at like November-ish. We'll be starting the pre-order, so kind of keep an eye out for that. We'll let you know more info. But like the Iron Giant stuff's not done. Like we want to do more even after the stuff that we have planned. We have some ideas, and depending on how this does, we can move into that. But we also want to do the Iron Giant, the bolt that kind of hooks his jaw onto. It's kind of like the heart of the movie. Like Mike, you have a tattoo of it. I know it means a lot to you and Lauren. It's kind of like this thing where if you look online, there's a lot of people doing stuff with it, and it means a lot to people. It's kind of like representation of the movie in a way, where like there's the S and there's the Iron Giant face, but like the bolt is kind of like the, you know, like I said, like kind of like the heart, even though it's his name, it hooks his jaw on. It's like kind of like the heart of the movie. You're like, it's Hogarth's friend when his friend is dead, kind of. So we, yeah. If you haven't seen it, maybe someone dies. It's he comes back. It's all good. So this is kind of the design for the bolt. And there was no files for this, right? This was just kind of, we actually, there's an amazing site, and I was so glad that this guy, it was like, being a fan, like I'll go online and see fan sites, and they're always updating with like the weirdest stuff. There's like an ultimateirongiant.com, it's ultimateirongiant.net, and it's this guy's collection, he collects everything. I mean, like Japanese clocks that open up in the center, and the clock comes out of the Iron Giant's chest, and colorways, and like plush, like everything. They released a lot of stuff in the 90s, and it wasn't popular because Warner Brothers didn't promote the movie. So this guy contacted us recently and was like losing his mind about like, his figures. And we're like, we're giving you one for free. You have to have it in your collection. He's kind of like the guy that stores all this stuff. So I mean, it was really cool to have him kind of see this. But he has like archives of you know, design work for the movie, and this was one of the sheets for the design of the bolt from the original movie. And we used this as a basis to design the actual 3D bolt, which then Clem, right, unboxed. Yeah, I did the design work on this too.
Yeah, this one was hard though because in the movie you don't really get to see the. I don't know if you can go. The panel's right there. You don't really get to see the panel that well. So and when it does, when it turns towards the camera, the light's flashing. So you know, going back to the illustration.
Sorry, this is the first year. I don't know what's going on. There we go.
No, one more.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, one more back. So you see these like there's little red lines right there, because this is an extremely low res image and that's all there is available. So it's just we had to like kind of like guesswork what the panel kind of looked like. That's why I drew little red lines for the little wires. You know, they're kind of like little black lines that are represented on the actual panel. And yeah, it's just this is as good as it gets. Like this is blown up. You know, when you see it like on your computer screen, it's kind of the worst. But yeah, so there's a lot of guesswork, but I think we did pretty well.
Yeah, you can see the time, like the date stamp on the bottom's kind of cut off. It's like 8/10/98. So we really tried to use every you know, available reference from the original stuff that we could to make it as, you know, it's weird because it's an animated thing, but you want to make it as screen accurate as possible. So we were kind of gauging when Hogarth, like the scenes in the movie where Hogarth's holding the bolt, we kind of thought about like what that child at that age size would be, and what, you know, that kind of, you know, length would be if he's holding this bolt. So we're like, I don't know, let's maybe guess this size. So it's an animated film, but we're trying to go like 1-to-1 as possible for like real world stuff. You know, but that's the physical, you know, that's kind of one of the first ones that we got sent to us. And then this is the final bolt. The buttons will be clickable. Like one button will be clickable, and then it'll actually blink like in the movie. Like, so it'll feel kind of like it's alive when it's on your nightstand beside your bed. What do we got next here? Let's see if we can get this going. There we go. We're moving on to Hitchcock land here. So like when we started doing the toys, there's a lot of toy companies out, and there's a lot of amazing toy companies out. I should, you know, add to that. Like there's Hot Toys, it's kind of like the best. Like they're the stuff they do is like witchcraft. I don't understand it. But like we wanted to not just be like a 6-scale, 12-inch figure company. We wanted to do stuff like, you know, the Iron Giant and the Bolt. And we'll talk about turtle stuff later. But like the Hitchcock is kind of like our first 6-scale type of figure, and it kind of goes back to the, you know, what I was saying at the beginning about, you know, wanting to do Kubrick stuff and wanting to do, you know, we were talking about like, oh, you know, what directors would be cool? Romero, Carpenter, you know, there's all these guys that kind of have a distinct look, and they also have like the fan base. So we did the shirt series, like I think it was last year with Hitchcock, and since we had contact with the estate, we just kind of asked, like, would you be willing to do a figure? And this was kind of like, you know, proof of concept in a way, because before they're really skittish to do it because there's all these like you know, kind of like bobblehead type Alfred Hitchcock-y things, but it just looks like an old man with a suit on. You know, it doesn't look like Hitchcock, and there's not like a bird by it or something to make it look like Hitchcock. It's just like an old bobblehead man. Like, it doesn't look necessarily cool. So we wanted to really show that we would respect it. And like Rob Jones had always, you know, talked about, who was the sculptor?
Trevor Grove.
Trevor Grove. We'd seen these Robert Shaw, the Quint sculpts online, and we'd seen all these amazing, you know, head sculpts. We're like, oh man, this guy is unbelievable. And when we talked to Brock, he's like, oh yeah, I know him, totally. We'll have him do the Hitchcock. So I think it really, really came out super, super well with, you know, the actual likeness. Because there's a lot of Hitchcock stuff when you think about it, you think of a certain way, but when you actually get down to it and looking at the reference photos, it's kind of a wide range. He's like real goofy, and then he's real serious. So it's, you know, and since we weren't going to do multiple heads, it was kind of like finding one that kind of matched Hitchcock tone, you know, meeting it in between, so to speak. So that's what we tried to do with the head, and then it kind of came to like the accessories. I'm going to talk about that again. Like I was like, oh yeah, we need to do like every single. We need to like make a working 35mm tiny film camera. Tiny film. Like I just.
He's not exaggerating.
I really did ask for a camera.
And this is like, you know, we're doing this over the phone, and you know, he's like, camera, you know, film. I'm just like,
I got the share though. I was like, you have to have a director's share. So I got the share.
Yeah.
So you know, we had to have different hands so we could hold, you know, tobacco products. And, but no, we also ate shoes and then like the birds. And so we decided to do. I think we did a seagull and a raven. And of course, we needed the clapboard and knife, and you know, you like the cigars, of course. And this is kind of the final product. This will probably be a 2015 thing. Like we have some stuff happening, like we said, in November, and then December we're going to try to like, you know, take it easy a little bit. But like in 2015, the toy stuff is really going to be, I think really fun for you guys. Like we have, like we'll be talking about some future stuff at the end of this. After we, you know, talk about the stuff we're already working on, we'll announce some new things. So hopefully that'll be exciting. This is super, super fun, and this is, you know, I'm glad that Mike is up here to talk about this, because I really wanted an artist up to kind of talk about, you know, the thought process between this, because I think how did it go, Mike? Did I just send you an email kind of like, hey, would you want to do a toy or whatever?
Like,
is it very kind of like vague? It wasn't like binding.
Yeah, it's just like, hey, Mike, do you want to do an Ninja Turtle toy of your, just like us? And I don't know, of course it's like a slam dunk question, yeah, of course I want to do it. And that was probably, what, late last year?
Yeah, it's probably, yeah, late last year. Like we had, like one of the first licenses, like when I started with Mondo, we were doing like the poster stuff, we didn't really do licensing. We was like, do it, right? It was just like, oh, we're showing a cool movie, let's do this, right? No one cares. They were like, oh wow, you can get sued for that. So we started doing stuff the right way. And you know, when I came in, I got like Universal Monsters, and then Turtles was owned by 4Kids at the time before Nickelodeon took it. So we did that, and we did like a couple movie posters, and Reese Cooper did a 4-print set. But we really didn't, we did some shirts, we really didn't do a lot on it. And then when Nickelodeon kind of took over, it was like, oh man, like the anniversary was coming up, and like the movie was coming out, and all this stuff was happening, and we were doing the Iron Giant, we were looking for other stuff to do, and I thought it'd be kind of a cool thing to kind of go back to the beginning of Mondo with the Turtles and get it. And so they said yes, and we could do the toys, and there wasn't a conflict with other people doing a similar thing. And then it became like, there's so many turtle products from the Playmates years. You know, like they did the core series of the figures, and then it was like Space Turtles and Star Trek Turtles and Troll Turtles and like all this cool shit. And like it was actually, I like it. You know, like I know Mike is kind of collecting it now again, and that was, and it wasn't like an idea of like, let's do a bunch of variant weird turtles, but it was like, we can do more, because we wanted to do 6-scale turtles. But we also wanted to do something else, and I always really liked, you know, Mike started doing the JLU stuff at like Universal Monsters, and he did some Adventure Time, and I always really, really liked Mikey, and thought it might be cool, specifically for like the turtle, like the pop, like the ice cream pop. It's like if you were, you know, on a street where a ice cream man would come, like you probably have had one of these things, like a crooked gumball, or whatever. Right? And it's just so, it really makes me feel good. Like it makes me think of like, oh yeah, I was in Kansas and I was doing this, whatever, right? So, you know, I asked Mike about it, and it was kind of like, oh yeah, it really felt like we'll see if it happens. And then even me, I was like, well, we'll see if this happens, right? Because who knows? We're doing toys, and it's like, a lot of things, because we could send this to, you know, we worked with Dan. This is how we kind of met Dan. Rob Jones was like, oh, I met this guy. He lives in England, and he's doing this thing, and it's really amazing. So we went to Dan, and we sent it to him, and it was really quick. You guys had the digital back to us like super, super fast. And I think this was the, yeah, like this was what they sent back. It was like, whoa, this could kind of like be a real thing. It worked, right? Because like sometimes you see an image and like that would be the most amazing toy in the world, but when you actually put it into 3 dimensions, it's like this thing is never gonna work. Like it'd be too expensive, or it's gonna fall over, or whatever, right? So that's kind of. Do you remember your first?
I think actually the first one had sculpted features into it. Because remember you had like the little chubbier cheeks. And then,
oh yeah.
And then we're like, I think we should paint those details into it. And so then, yeah, I don't know, 15 minutes later or something. And, yeah, and it's kind of weird because you have to look at it and sort of, it looks very like it's lacking a lot of stuff, but it slowly came together.
Yeah, this is. Do you want to kind of talk about the process and like what the digital from how the kind of the jump between digital and like getting that image and you guys taking on your side and making that to this, because I think that's it's like when we work with posters, like Rob, Mitch, and I will have an idea and then we'll send it off to guys like Mike or guys like Tyler or whoever, like artists, and they'll, a lot of times the way we work with artists is they'll kind of go for it, and then they'll come back and we'll kind of give notes on that. There's very few times where we have a very, very specific idea. So like with these guys, like it's like kind of working, I mean it is, like it's working with another artist. Like they're going out with these different sculptors and giving feedback. So it's kind of a very exciting, different way to think about versus like 2D art with like posters. I think you have to think about a million different things, packaging, safety stuff, whatever. So you can talk about a little bit about that on this, specifically this figure.
Do you mind going back?
Yeah.
If you can see from the original design from Mike, very thin limbs. Usually when we start doing digital for artists, we try and do an exact interpretation of what we've been given. And then when we hand over to the engineers, they say that this isn't going to work, you have to do slight different modifications. So when you see the actual pull, we've done like a digital print, we take this and we have to revise the limbs, make them thicker, and then work out how the thing's going to stand, and kind of consider gravity and all these things and stress. So I might go back to the other one now. So
yeah.
Got very, very thin limbs here, and then so how to just thicken them up marginally just to give them the stance. And one thing is with vinyl, it does deteriorate over time, so you have to consider we don't want your toy falling over in like 3 or 4 years. I don't think Mike would be very happy, like the shelf is being like to the ground, doesn't reflect very well. So it's all those minor details. But this was actually done by we did digital. And then this was actually hand sculpted, a little bit of CNC, because usually we use rapid prototyping now, which is a very, very quick process. So there's a combination of CNC milling and hand styles just to get everything done together. I think it translates quite well, so I don't know what we've got next.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, these
that was like, this took like a week to make, it was amazing, it was so quick. No, but this, so, kind of after we got that done, it became, like there was lots of images that were kind of coming back and forth. We had different paint styles. One was kind of glossy, and it was like shiny. And like Mike said, we had like the mouth sculpted in. And I really think that the way it ended up, it felt more like Mike's design, and he can talk more about that, but it felt like kind of like Mike's JLUs in his images have a certain style, and I think that it really does feel like it was almost like a custom, where he had this base model, like a dunny or something, for lack of a better term, but like, he like drew onto this, because his line work, like the rounded corners and stuff, like it actually, like the smile looks like the JLU, and I think that getting those types of details were very important. So like when you were, like, Mike, do you want to talk about like when you were seeing this stuff, like kind of the thought process?
Well, it was a little bit like nerve-wracking because me and Justin would get together and talk about this all the time, and because we're both big Turtle fans, and I was a little bit concerned that we wouldn't be able to, because like if you don't have to go back to the image, but the actual image of the turtle, there's no way you can make that into a toy. It's like, yeah, it's ridiculous, and like with the legs and all that stuff. And so when you look at them side by side, they're quite different. But as it started coming together, I think actually it was until we got the actual paint and went back, and I was just like, I was nervous up until that point, because you're just getting these weird molded, you know, Frankenstein things back together. And you know, you're talking to Dan in England, and he's working with a company in China, and so you're getting all these different processes happening that are completely out of your control. And yeah, and I don't know, at the end, I was pretty excited with it. I mean, it's one of the cooler things I've gotten to do in my career. Yeah, no, I was thrilled with how it came out. And I mean, that's like, I did the least amount of work in this, like, honestly.
Yeah, like, I really feel like this panel is kind of a way to, you know, celebrate Dan and Brock on this, because like a lot of things that happen, like, you know, like with Mondo Con in general, like, you know, it'd be like, oh wow, Justin, great job, like this is so cool, but I mean, I'm up here doing a panel, and everyone else is out there like doing real work shit. So like these guys are the, like behind the scenes, and those guys are behind the scenes, and they're really the ones that are like putting this stuff together, and it's just kind of like us having the ideas and wanting to do this. So there's always people like behind, you know, like I really appreciate it. Like you guys came on and like made this happen for us. So you know,
yeah, that was,
like,
yeah,
thank you. Like I really appreciate it. But like this was kind of. You know, like I said, we wanted to come out with, like at Comic-Con, it was like this, we wanted to like show you the, you know, how this was going to feel. And we didn't want, like I said, we didn't want to be a 6-scale company. We didn't want to be like, you know, like a 3 3/4 inch figure company. We wanted to just kind of jump all over the map and do fun stuff. So, you know, having, you know, the articulated, you know, like 16-inch, really complex, you know, plastic figure, you know, like that type of thing. And then we have the 6-scale figure with like, you know, actual tailored clothes. And then we have the artist, you know, the artist's vision. And I think that was important, that we have like a representation of all those things, because, you know, I'm a fan of all these things. I know Brock is a fan of the stuff, and, you know, like Mike's a fan of toys. And there's a lot, we're still like all fans. So this is kind of a dream come true in a lot of ways. Of, you know, we get to work with these companies, we get to talk to Brad Bird. Brad Bird retweets that we have a toy. You know, it's just like really weird that, you know, you're watching this movie on a clamshell VHS in your parents' house, like crying. Like, oh, this is so sad. Now you get to actually work with these guys. It's so insane.
Didn't you show this to Kevin Eastman?
Yeah, Kevin Eastman was really into it. Yeah. Speaking of Kevin Eastman, so this is kind of like the turtle, where we kind of go off from Mike's turtle and get into the comic book stuff, which I'm really passionate about. Like Eastman and Laird created this thing in the 80s, like the early 80s in Maine. You know, they were like cooking lobster in the summers, and they were kind of joking around and made this you know, like modern, like this is legendary stuff. Like this will never go away. And this, we really wanted to hold, like use the comics. I don't know if you guys are toy fans or not, but like there's a company called NECA, and they did, you guys fist bumping out there. They did the Eastman and Laird turtle figures a couple years ago, and there's like been bootleg ones on Amazon for a while with colored masks. But they're like legitimately, I will give them this huge shout out. Like nostalgia aside from Playmates, they're the best figures. To me, they're the best turtle figures of all time. They're unbelievably, they're like, I mean, I couldn't tell you, like I was on the internet and I was looking at all these reviews, and like they can hold the weapons like they did in the comic book. So it's like the art, they use the actual art and stuff. So it's just like the perfect stuff. I still have them. We still, like when we're working on these projects, still reference them all the time. Not to like copy, but to do things differently. Because like if you've read the Turtles comics, it was, you know, there's from like issue 1 to 4, they're kind of figuring it out. They're like, how are the turtles going to work? Like Kevin Eastman's drawing, Peter Laird's drawing, they're different styles. And then when issue 4, it kind of melds together, and they kind of get the sense of like what the turtles, and it's not the pizza turtles, it's like the kind of like, you know, there was a cartoon recently, a couple years ago, where I think Cartoon Network put like the pizza turtles from the 90s cartoon, and the new, whatever the new incarnation of turtles were, and then the Eastman Laird turtles. And they all came together, and it's like, whoa, these guys are like psychos, and these guys love pizza, what's up with that? You know, it's all this kind of like interacting with each other. And so we wanted to have kind of representation of that. So if Mike's, for lack of a better term, is like the kind of like the animation turtle, or like the kind of artist rendition, we wanted to go super hard into the Eastman Laird stuff. And the first thing we, you know, like, Brock and I remember when Brock was at Sideshow, I'd be like, hey man, you know, like, you guys just released that Mouser, can I get one of those? You know, like I was asking for stuff, and he like sent me the Mouser, kind of like huge, even like the wacky walk-in Mousers with the Playmates, with like the chomping action, like I loved the Mouser design. So that was one of the first things that we wanted to do. And these were like, again, these are kind of like opening the email inbox to you guys. Like this is the stuff that I would see, or Brock would send, like text. And be like, hey, check it out, I got this picture. And it's like, oh my God, this isn't digital, this is like a sculpted thing. Do you have any like insight in like the process, what he used or whatever?
This is, it's funny that you mentioned the Mauser we did for Sideshow, because the gentleman that did that also did this, his name is Michael Norman. And it's just pretty cool, because it's just like, the weird thing about this was like, okay, well, we want to do it in 1/6 scale, which means that if you're a 6-foot person is scaled down to 12 inches. So you have to kind of do the math, and I hate math, but I'm trying to figure out how big these guys are, and because they're in the in the comic books, it's just there's one drawing of Baxter Stockman like holding one. It's not from the actual comic; it's from like one of the design books or one of the early things. But he's holding one. It looks like about the size of a fat cat, kind of. And so I was like, I think they're 2 feet tall. Like, and so so basing like that off that. So the 2 feet. So 2 feet is 4 inches, and all that kind of like goofy math that you think you'll never get to use, but even when you do toys, you do. So yeah, so that was it. So then when Michael pumped this out, it was like this is an early version, and then we're like, well, let's around the joints, let's add in, especially the hips and the jaw, let's add in the actual circle as like the original comic art, because I want to be able to have the painter be able to drop in the black paint as if someone's inking it. So this is actually an early version of it.
And that's the final, which super like. Man, over the moon with this. Like when these came in, like the pictures on the white background, like the sleeping rats. They're not dead, they're sleeping, right? Let's let the rats lie. Yeah, so that like this was kind of like the intro to Turtles, like for us. I think we got these before even like the Mikey stuff, right? Like these were like super, fast, and they're ultra articulated. Like the toes, like every toe moves, and like everything moves. Like the mouths open up. And so this was kind of like the, we had these at San Diego Comic-Con, we were like, wait for the 6 scale, we're going to do the 6 scale stuff. Like out in the lobby, we have a prototype of kind of the style. Like there's going to be some stuff changing, obviously, it's a prototype, but before we get into that, like we did like Kevin Eastman art, that was really important to me, like, the first Turtle stuff, like the history of it, it's kind of like, there's a really great like comics journal, I think it's Gary Groth, does this interview about like Tundra Press. Like Kevin Eastman did this thing where he decided to do like this imprint on his own with turtle money. And he went out and he was just hire out people and give them advances and all this stuff. And he like just all the like the history of like where he came from. Like I said earlier, like he was in Maine and he was doing this stuff with a friend, and they just kind of happened upon this stuff. And this was kind of like the first drawing that they did. This was like kind of like a joke. It was like, hey, wouldn't it be funny if a turtle was like a kung fu master, like a ninja? What would that look like? And they did this. And like I think they recently were like auctioning off like I think a couple of years ago they auctioned off like the first like 4 turtle combined, like with Michelangelo swinging nunchucks and stuff. They did that, but this was actually kind of like the first joke. And then Peter Laird did his counter, where it was kind of like a pointed mask with a pointed nose with a mask over the nose and stuff. But I think we agree that this is like probably the coolest of the original turtle figures, and we wanted to make kind of honor it and make a statue of it. So this was kind of like the images when we were getting them in of like. It's hard because like when you're like when you're doing posters, you don't necessarily want to send sketches to the studio because they see this and like that is not what goes on shelves, right? And they get freaked out. It's kind of like, so this is internally, like we were saying earlier, like Mike and I don't necessarily work in toys. This is like new to us, so it's exciting and we have all these ideas, but we don't really know how it works. So like to see these things, it's like obviously this we know this is early, but this is so exciting to see the stuff physically. Because it's like I said earlier, it's different from a 2D image to a 3D image. So this one specifically, because of Kevin Eastman's hatching and all this stuff, there's been lots of like, I will say that the NECA Turtles that they put out, like the color versions, the black and white versions, I was just so on. So like when we were doing this black and white figure, it was very important that it wasn't just kind of a last minute thought process of, oh, we're gonna go in and add in like the, like you see the last one, like the hatching and stuff. It was very important that it wasn't kind of like, really and truly, like, to be blunt, this could have make or break the figure, like the paint job. Because we can get we can get pretty, ballpark in the parameters of like this design, but like the paint was really important. So we worked on the sculpt, and we got this back. And if you see like the face, and we don't have a side by side, but the face is kind of like, for lack of a better word, like chubby. Like it's kind of too round, like the muzzle's too round. So we went back and did some revisions on that, and came out with this, and then kind of brought it back a little bit. It kind of had almost like a weird like underbite kind of thing. So this is, and we're gonna do a color version, right? Yeah, we're gonna do the black and white. We're also gonna do a fully painted red mask turtle version of like the first turtle, kind of like the first in the comic books. They all have red masks because like the cartoon is when they differentiated with the different colors. So this was like, we had mics, we had the mousers, and we had the first turtle. And at Comic-Con, we were kind of like hinting at like we were doing the 6-scale stuff, and we didn't really have anything to show until now at Mondo Con. We have it outside. So this was like the first kind of sculpt. And there's a really talented sculptor named Irene that's working with us. Brock, they live in LA, so Brock can actually go see this stuff. So I'm getting pictures. And I remember getting this in and kind of taking the NECA figure and texting Brock like pictures of the NECA figure next to it, and being like, the neck is really long, like it's protruding over the shell. It's a kind of fun thing where like you do posters, and I'll work with Mitch and Rob sometimes on like art directing posters, but with this it's kind of like me and Brock going back and forth and looking at stuff and looking at the comics and being like, this doesn't really look right, this doesn't look right. So it's really fun to me to be able to work on this type of subject matter and actually like get it. So this was kind of the revised. The NECA figures, if you've seen them, if you haven't seen them, they're more of like, almost like a Peter Laird style, where they have really long, slender necks. They're kind of just longer and not as like bulky. And I'm not talking like you need like a Rob Liefeld, like bulky ass turtle or something, right? But like, we wanted them kind of, like Kevin Eastman kind of had like broad shoulders, and they're like a stout, like, they weren't like bodybuilders. They were kind of like, I've been doing this, I've been training with this, and I'm a solid muscle. Like I'm a turtle, but I'm like a trained weapon type of idea. So like, it seems weird when I'm saying this, but this is all kind of like thought process we're going into these turtles to kind of differentiate. So when we saw this, it was like, okay, cool. Like this isn't specifically Kevin Eastman, this isn't specifically Peter Laird, this is kind of a mesh in between them. And that was really important for us to kind of hit. Obviously, like, the belts and everything will go on later, like as accessories and stuff, but this is kind of like the core, this is kind of the core before any of the articulation or any of the detailing went in. This was kind of like a side-by-side of where you see like the shell didn't come up over the head, and, it didn't come up like enough to fill in that space. So there's like, again, just kind of illustrating the processes that we go through where we don't just get an image in and it's like, go to print. Like there's a lot of back and forth, and there's a lot of kind of like thinking about, what it's going to be like when you're actually playing with the figure. Like the head has ball joint, but like if you tilt it back, it's going to hit the shell is the like kind of like the bow in the back and the hit, and make it so it can't tilt its head back. So there's a lot of things that we have to think about. Like Dan said, with the deterioration of the vinyl, like we don't want your figures falling over. So there's all these things that we have to think about outside of the actual design that could change it. This is actually, we're done. I guess we're done because I clicked that. I guess we're done. That was not planned well. What are we doing on time here? We're good. We're going to do a Q&A too after this if you guys are feeling feisty. So this is obviously we have this at the industry live screen printing. We did posters for this. We did shirts for this. But we're big Hellboy fans. Obviously Mike Mignola's here. He did a bunch of stuff for us, and like Brock and I were talking, and we went and met with him in LA a couple weeks ago, and I'm happy to announce that we're working with him, and this is going to be our next toy. This is the first, if you don't know this is the first drawing of Hellboy. So we're going to continue, like with the first turtle, we're going to continue that first series, and this is going to be the statue that we're going to put out, like a vinyl figure, soon. So look for that next year, probably, hopefully, fingers crossed. And then, do you want to talk about the other?
Yeah. So, do you guys like Scott Pilgrim?
Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, that's it. Yeah. So, yeah. I just want to know if you like
drop the mic. So yeah, so that's something else where there's lots of stuff that we've been having meetings on, and like this is kind of like the beginning for us. And like your response, like the fans' response has been very, very good on forums. You know, coming out of Comic-Con, people were really excited, like generally excited about this stuff. So we're really wanting to be there, like for you guys and kind of as fans, be like, has there been, you know, like the Scott Pilgrim figure that you want? Like on your shelf right now, is there a Scott Pilgrim figure sitting there? If there's not, like then that's where we come in. Like we're gonna do something that we would want on our shelves because we're Scott Pilgrim fans, right? So like, where's the Ramona Flowers figure? It's not there. Like, do we make that? Do we make the 7, you know, X's? Do we do this? So, you know, like, we would love to know what you guys think if you're talking online or whatever. You know, let us know. Like, cause I think it's like a back and forth between like the fans and us. Like, I really want to know what you guys think. And we have the most amazing dudes working with us, and we have like, you know, the support of guys like Mike Mignola, guys like Oni Press and Brian Lee O'Malley. So, if you guys want to see something, you know, please let us know. We're always kind of watching. We're always kind of paying attention to what you guys want. But right now, it's just kind of a super, you know, selfish, like we like turtles, we like Batman, we like this, we like this, so we're doing all this stuff. I think we have like maybe like 10 minutes or so left. Is anybody else that has questions? Yeah, in the back there?
So I've been collecting Sideshow since 2005, which is how I know Rob. And
Thanks.
We have our own kind of community, our freaks community, and we would go back and forth talking about things we'd like to see changed. And I know you said you want to keep communication open with fans and stuff, but are you, or collectors, are you willing to change up any designs if a whole bunch of people are like, this doesn't feel right? Because when we get our protos from Sideshow, sometimes we're like, this just should be changed, and they won't change it.
You guys want to hit that? That's out of my pay grade. I don't know.
Well, working with Sideshow, I actually, you know, from back in the day, I know what it takes to sometimes to make some of these changes, and truthfully, some of the changes were made with certain things depending on what the product was. But sometimes when the fans and customers see the images of a certain product, it's already so far into the process that it really is impossible to change it without costing, you know, it'll basically double the price of the product. So I think it's something certainly that if there's a major mistake that we're just dopes about and we didn't see, like, and you guys are like, no, the turtle shouldn't have 4 eyes, and we're like, okay, you know, well, I think we can certainly, you know, look at addressing that. But it always comes down to what is physically possible. I think that's really what it is. And feel the same way, Dan.
Pretty much. I mean, you have to consider the actual the limitations with molds and manufacturing, and sometimes an additional part can end up costing thousands. And if you have a budget and you want to give a definite price to you guys that you can afford, then sometimes you have to make those like kind of calls.
For instance, you know, I remember this is really fun. When I got the boxes from Dan of the little Mikey figure, like tech is amazing until you need to use it, right? Until it doesn't work, right? And I was like trying to FaceTime Mike for like an hour straight. We're like trying to go back and forth, like, are you connected to Wi-Fi? I don't know. Restart your phone. I don't know. I was trying to make this big like, oh well, FaceTiming the first look at the turtles figures or whatever, right? But it's like, you know, when we got them, it was like, oh, it'd be really cool to do. You remember we were talking about the hand?
Mm-hmm.
Like we wanted like the turtle pop. And this was after it was done. And kind of to your question, like, can we make this change? We're like, oh, well, it'd be cool to have like a turtle pop that could come out of the hand, and then maybe you have like a Darth Vader. And you put Darth Vader, like it has a turtle pop in his hand, or they'd be like almost like an accessory that could go into his hand, but it's just at this point, like, I don't think it's, you know, it'd be kind of like this, really and truly as simple as that seems, it's kind of like starting over, right? Like you're already so far in this process, it's like, well, and I think that's part where, you know, kind of like the fandom or like the enthusiasm that we have, like we're really, like I mean, obviously knock on wood, and we intentionally never put something out with like a 4-eyed turtle or something like where we know you guys are like, oh man, these guys suck. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like, absolutely, like, I think that, you know, your guys, you know, not from like a lame like customer satisfaction type of thing, but like your guys' satisfaction is really important. Like that you guys get these toys and you're like, yep, this is exactly the type of thing that I'm thinking about. Because it's like, we were kind of making this for what we would want. Like no one made like the Iron Giant figure, so like we're doing the Iron Giant figure based on the movie. Like there's a Trend Masters one from the 90s, it's totally its own thing, but we wanted like the specific, like, you know, one from the film, from the files, from Brad Bird. Anything else? Any other cues? Yeah.
You see yourself moving into like vehicles as well? Say like the Prometheus ship that exists in
We've had talks about different vehicles, not specifically like ships, but we've had talks about like different die-cast vehicles, like cars and trucks and stuff like that from different movies. It's kind of like we've had ideas about tin toys and stuff in the past. And I think it's just a matter of like wanting to do it right. Because like I don't want to do like if we're doing Japanese vinyl, for instance, I don't want to do it in China. Like I want to do it in Japan. If we're doing tin toys, I want to do them in Japan. I want to find the person who does like the real deal, like die-cast tin toy, like shogoken type of like stuff. Like I want everything that we do to be legit. Like I don't want it to be like oh yeah, we saw that one thing, we thought it'd be cool to rip it off, and it kind of like comes out half-assed. Like I want it to go back to what, like the beginnings of like why did they do this in the first place? It's like why did they make the Star Wars figures 3 3/4? Everyone like loses their mind about 3 3/4 figures. It was literally a guy in a conference room that said there was a question: how big should the Star Wars figures be? And he said, how about that big? And they literally took a ruler and were like 3 3/4, and that set it for like decades. Like there's still reactions doing 3 3/4 figures off of this one conference room thing where this guy was like that big. If he was like maybe that big, maybe we get different Star Wars figures. So it's just this weird thing where there's really no rules to it. Like anything can catch on, anything can be cool, anything can fail. It's a sure bet as it is. Like it's so like the toy world is so like super bizarre. Like I don't know if you guys have been by like Dan has a booth with Skinner out there, and he has all this stuff. So if there's any kind of question about what the quality is going to be like, he has like finished stuff out there for sale. This is not like plugged, you're like, go buy like unbox stuff or whatever. It's like legit, like I'm going there later to look at it. And it was exciting for me, because like this is the first time I'd met Dan, and going to his booth and seeing like the SpongeBob holding the brain and doing all this, like there's all the Jeff Lamb like grease bat stuff. It's really impressive, it's really good quality, and I think that's kind of with Mondo, with like the posters and stuff, like we really want to continue that. Like, you guys trust us for stuff. Like I never wanted to like, abuse that trust you guys have. I think you have. I don't know. Any other questions? Yeah.
For you guys, any to a young artist or sculptor, any advice on like moving into the action figure like industry, or like how to get started in it?
Don't do it. Don't do it. This is a dirty business.
Look at this one.
Yeah, right. Are you talking from like a perspective of making your own product, or actually moving into the toy industry?
Well, I mean either. I imagine maybe starting small, but then
sure.
Do you move like how do you get to be sort of where you guys or some of your peers are? They're like making some of these decisions and getting to create these things.
Right, it's for the mass industry, it's like the normal kind of routine of.
How did you get into it, Dan? What were your college days like?
Yeah, okay.
He has a really great story about how he got into this.
Yeah. In the year of 1988, I was ran out of college for video piracy. I was caught using the services that I was like the video recorders with banks, like communications. I was using to run off Robocop. I got caught and had to leave fast. So
what were some of the ones you were selling? What were some of the hits?
I think Robocop was a big one, and Disney cartoons at that time. You just couldn't get them. So
Star Wars Christmas Special.
That one's well. Don't follow what I did. That's it. It's not a good example. No, from there I went to like retail, comic books, and just lived a life, just a complete geek for centuries, and then ended up working for a company called Corgi, which I don't know if you guys know.
Corgi rules.
Okay, like die-cast and all the rest of it. I was brought in as like a licensing acquisition, project manager, account manager, janitor, anything that goes. And my boss at the time, I said to him, look, we should pursue video game licenses. And he said, well, make me a list, and Nintendo was at the top. And this was about 3 years before the Nintendo Wii came out. He said, right, okay, we'll get the license. They got it. And I was put in charge of liaising with Kyoto and NOA and the other guys, and sourcing other products from, at the time, Band Presto and Sanai, and the guys that already had a program with a Mario product. Cut long story short, they went to administration. I was left literally like jobless, hadn't been paid for 3 months, and got a phone from Nintendo, and they're like, do you want to take over? Do you want to run the toy program for us in Europe? And I was like, let's do it. So literally it was like, heaven sent. I had to borrow $30,000, got my first container, and this was 9 years ago. From that, just invested in digital sculptors, like really like strong people that have like a heartfelt commitment to product and design. In Hong Kong, my business partner, he's not from toys, 16 years of rapid prototyping and engineering, so it's been a slog, but that's the way I didn't got to this part. It was just blind luck. That's it. So.
I could explain from my perspective too. I mean, because I've been wanting to do toys for a long time, probably since I went to Roto Fuji. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. It's a toy store in Chicago. I used to ride my bike by it every day, and went in there, and all these designer toys just blowing my mind. They were just crazy and absurd and all this stuff. And slowly, as I started making a name for myself or whatever in art, I had people like Clem, the guy who engineered the Iron Giant figure. He would come up to me and say, "Hey, you want to do a toy? We can do that for you." But in that route, you have to have capital, and it's really not not a real super safe investment. It's not a good return on your money, but it's like the coolest, in my opinion, one of the coolest things you can do. And so for a long time I was waiting, like, for the right time, and then Justin was like, "Hey, we're doing a turtle toy." Like, yeah, fuck yeah, I really do want to do that. And you know, and of course then Mondo takes all the risk, I don't have to worry about it. And, but yeah, I mean, you just, if it's something you want to do, you know, you just gotta, whatever route you're going, you just gotta, I don't know, try real hard.
Yeah, and especially if you're getting into sculpting or anything, even if you suck, post your stuff online. Yeah. Post it, because you know, I can tell you that the kid, I call him a kid, he's an adult man now, but the guy that did the Hitchcock, I mean, that's how he was discovered. He would just post these amazing sculpts online, and then finally someone plucked him up, and that's what it is. And even if the stuff isn't good, you're saying, that's right. If you interact with artists online, you try to get critiques and all that kind of stuff. That's really the way to go. Just give feedback, because you can only learn from that sort of thing. So
recently we've had our fourth successful Kickstarter campaign. We had people come to us, and usually, again, just really talented, good creators. There's a lot of people. Every week I must get about 15 to 20 people saying I want to make toys, and so we politely send out to them, just consider something else, because it's so expensive, and we don't want to take your money and you end up like, you know, at your mum's house, filling up the garage with toys that no one wants and that type of thing. Just don't do it. Yeah, that's it. It is a huge gamble, but what we've been doing recently, we've had guys, and if the designs look solid and you've got some potential, we'll take it, and we've just built them for free, just done the digital for them and then rented them, so it actually looks like the toy is in hand. We've actually built it. And they use that for their Kickstarter strategy, so people have a really good idea of what the finished product looks like. Unfortunately, you know, we've got a good reputation for product, so when they say like, "Oh, supported by Unbox Industries," people, we've seen like the fourth one, just it went over the line like in a few days, you know, because people thought, okay, Unbox is backing them up, so it's going to be good. So that's a good way to do it. Yeah, but just again, as Brock was saying, just get yourself out there and promote what you're doing.
I think that's like what we recommend for anybody, like posters or anything. It's just like the internet's so huge, and you know, anyone can happen upon anything that we put up. So who knows what happens? Like that happens, you know, like with Mondo. You know, it just people will contact, or people will like, "Oh, I saw your thing," whatever. So yeah, it definitely doesn't hurt to get it out there. Yeah, totally. So I think I'm getting like waved at here to close this thing up. So I hope you guys didn't hate the first panel at Mondo Con.